All right, everyone, let's get right into it. We're talking about one of the biggest, most fundamental architectural shifts in Python's entire history. Seriously, this changes everything about how Python handles concurrency, and boy, has it been a long time coming.
For what feels like forever, right? Developers have been jumping through hoops, doing all sorts of gymnastics to get around the global interpreter lock. You know the GIL. It's that thing that basically forced Python to run on a single-lane bridge, even when you had an 8-lane highway of CPU cores. It was the bottleneck for true parallelism. Well, that's all about to change.
Yep, with Python 3.14 on the horizon, that promise of native multi-core performance, it's finally becoming a reality. We're talking about the real deal, running Python threads on separate CPU cores all inside the same process. No more weird workarounds, no more multi-processing headaches for CPU-bound tasks. This is true parallelism.
Okay, hold on. Before everyone gets too excited and starts rewriting their entire code base, we need a major reality check here. This improvement isn't free. It comes with a pretty hefty price tag, and it is absolutely not a silver bullet. In fact, if you're not careful, it can actually make your apps slower.
So, that leads us to the big question, right? What is the real story behind Python's new concurrency model? And that's exactly what we're going to break down today. We're going to slice through the hype and get right to the production reality. What's changed? What are the hidden costs? And most importantly, who is this actually for?
All right, let's start with the part nobody wants to talk about, the cost. I'm calling it the free threading tax, because believe me, it is not a free lunch. Getting rid of the JIL wasn't just flipping a switch. The core devs had to completely re-architect the guts of CPython, and that comes with a performance penalty.
So what does free threading actually mean? Well, to make it happen, the core team had to rip out that one single big, clumsy lock, the GIL, and replace it with a way more complex system. Think of it like swapping one master key for a whole bunch of smaller, more specific keys and new rules for memory management. It's all about making sure multiple threads can safely play in the same sandbox, but yeah, that introduces a whole new level of complexity under the hood.
Okay, now this is where it gets really cool. Two core mechanisms make this whole thing possible: biased reference counting and immortal objects. The analogy here is perfect. Think of biased ref counting like this. An object has a private notepad that its owner thread can write on super fast, but if another thread needs to access it, it has to use a slower, public whiteboard that everyone has to be careful with. And immortal objects are just what they sound like. Things like true, false, and small integers are now immortal. They never get destroyed, so you don't even need to bother with reference counting for them. Both are clever tricks to minimize that performance tax.
And this table just lays it all out, clear as day. This is the trade-off. You can get incredible near-linear scaling on multiple cores for your CPU-heavy tasks, but look at the cost. You're taking a 5 to 10% performance hit on all your single-threaded code. And the memory usage? It could go up by 15%, or it could be almost 3 times higher. That is a huge deal. For your average I/O-bound web app, you might actually be making things slower and way more expensive to run.
Okay, so we've talked about the cost. Now let's talk about the new toys we get to play with to actually leverage all this power. We're going to look at two big ones, the brand new JIT compiler and subinterpreters.
First up, the JIT. Now, if you hear JIT and think of something big and heavy like the JVM, just stop. This is totally different. It's a copy and patch JIT. It's basically like Mad Libs for machine code. Instead of writing a whole new program from scratch, it takes pre-compiled templates and just fills in the blanks like memory addresses at runtime. This makes it super lightweight and fast to compile, letting it churn out really optimized code for tight loops.
And it's super easy to turn on. You just set an environment variable. But, and this is a huge but, be warned. For most web applications, flipping this switch is just going to slow down your startup time for zero benefit. This thing is designed for long-running, computation-heavy loops, where the JIT has time to warm up and find the hot paths to optimize. So are you doing heavy data science? Awesome, this might be a game changer. Building a Django app, you're probably better off leaving it turned off.
Okay, so if free threading is for super fine-grained parallelism, and the JIT is for optimizing specific loops, then subinterpreters, well, they offer this incredible middle ground. This is the feature I think a lot of people are sleeping on. They've been hiding in the CAPI for years, but now we can use them directly from Python. It's like having multiple isolated Python worlds running inside a single process, each with its own JIL.
And that brings us to the new InterpreterPoolExecutor. This is huge. It gives you the true parallelism you'd get from FastAPI, but with the low startup time and low memory cost of using threads. Why? Because you're not spinning up whole new operating system processes. You're just creating these lightweight interpreters inside your existing process. And since they each have their own JIL, they can run on different cores at the same time. This is a massive win.
All right, theory is great, but what does any of this actually mean for the web frameworks and libraries we all use day in, day out? Django, FastAPI, NumPy. This is where the rubber really meets the road. Because if the ecosystem isn't ready for this, then none of it matters. Let's see how things are shaping up.
You know, the server landscape is already starting to shift. We're seeing these new super fast Rust-based servers like Granian pop up. They're specifically designed to take advantage of Python's new concurrency model and just minimize all the overhead. They handle all the low-level networking stuff in Rust, which is blazingly fast, and let Python do what it does best, the application logic. And the performance numbers are pretty incredible.
And for web developers, this is probably the most important slide in the whole deck. Look at this. When you're just slinging JSON around, sure, you see a massive 20x performance gap. But the second your application has to talk to a database, that gap just vanishes. It collapses to almost nothing. Why? Because your database is almost always the bottleneck. Your fancy framework doesn't matter if you're waiting on a slow query. The database is the great equalizer. Optimize your queries first.
The good news is the ecosystem is getting ready. Critical libraries, especially in the scientific stack, we're talking NumPy, PyTorch, Pandas, they're already releasing versions that are compatible with free threading. And a huge shout out has to go to Pyo3, which makes it so much easier to write JIL-free Rust extensions to replace old C code. This massive community effort is what's making this whole transition actually possible.
Okay, so this brings us to the big final question, the one you're all probably asking. Should you make the switch? And if so, when? It's not a simple yes or no. It really depends on what you're building. So let's break it down into some practical advice. So here's our checklist. Our advice is simple. Do not jump into this blindly. Free threading is a specialized tool for CPU-bound tasks. For most web apps that are I/O-bound, avoid it. The single-thread slowdown will likely just make your apps slower. The most important thing you can do is benchmark your specific workload. Test it on your app. And before you do anything, check that all your dependencies are thread safe. And honestly, for most people, you should probably look at subinterpreters first. They're often a safer, more efficient first step into parallelism.
And remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Right now with 3.13, free threading is an optional build. With 3.14, it'll be officially supported, but the GIL will still be on by default. We're probably looking at 2028 or even later before the GIL is disabled by default. So there's no need to panic. The ecosystem has time to adapt, and you have time to prepare.
So there you have it. Python's architecture has fundamentally changed. This opens up some absolutely incredible new doors for performance, but it's going to require a whole new way of thinking about our code's architecture. So the big question we'll leave you with is this. Is your code ready for the multi-core future?